Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to work on my Blackstone comic, but I'm actually going to talk to you about ways that you can get your own book out there. So I constantly have this question on the channel. Figured I should address it in more detail. And if I've got other videos, I'll try to link in them. And if I use resources or I talk about certain sites, I'll link to that in the description box below, so that you'll be able to get to what I'm talking about. So anyways, without further ado, let's get into it and talk about exactly what you can do to make your own book. Now, first things first, I want to tell anybody that's looking to do this, the very first thing that you have to do is come up with an idea. You have to draw a book. You have to put something together. You need to start with first completing a couple pages. Then you need to, well, very first you need to script something out, but you need to just kind of put it into place. So I think a lot of people start to collect all this information and go, okay, how do I get a book together? I got this really great idea and I want to create this comic, and they're all fire and brimstone. They got all this energy and motivation, but they don't know what to do with it. And then it kind of fizzles out when they realize how tough it can be to produce something like this. So essentially what you need to do is start producing pages. So script something out. If you got a great idea but you can't write, then you need to assemble a team. Avengers unite, right? So you got to get the writer, the guy that's good at drawing, the inker, and sometimes these will be the same person. Other times they will definitely not be the same person. And being aware of that is probably one of the hardest decisions. So essentially, you're a manager. You got to remember, when making a comic, you're a director. You're not an actor, but you're drawing the actors. You pretty much are the actor. You got to act out your scenes probably and things like that. It just comes across a little silly, but it does help. So you got to do all these things. You got to be the set coordinator. You got to be the cameraman. You got to be all these things and put this stuff together. But you also have to be a businessman, and you got to be a manager. So if you realize, like, a manager's job isn't always being the greatest at something, it's realizing when other people aren't great at it, and finding and putting the right people into place. That's what makes successful people successful, ultimately. From what I've found, like, there's a lot of people that try to wear all the hats. Like, for instance, I'm penciling, inking, coloring, or I'm not coloring, this will be a black and white book, but doing the writing, everything. Not saying that I can't get it done, but it's taken a long time. This is book 2. I've been working on these for years. It just takes an absorbent amount of time. Now, if I got the right team of people together to work with me on this, I have no doubt that we could put out a book every other month, and maybe even every month, if we had the right team and the right structure, meaning that it was generating income, there was no other complications and things like that, no other work that had to be done to produce this work. So that all being said, it would probably make more sense to assemble a team and do it that way. I don't do that because this is my baby, and I do some other things, and I do this more as a way to get this out there on my own, time frame, and my own on my own backbone kind of thing. But that doesn't mean that that's the right way. That's what I'm doing, and that's what works for me and what my goals are. So now, if you're trying to get something out and you want to work for, like, you want to submit your work, we're going to talk about submitting it to places like Image, and you'll have to look up some of the other guys that do this. It might be Dark Horse and IDW, but they might not. And this is where you, as the viewer, if you know more about these particular topics that I touch on, I really recommend that you start commenting below and offer the feedback. So the real power, as we probably all know, of YouTube, is really when everybody starts to offer information and get proactive and comment in the section below. So I really recommend that you read through that, not just take the words that I'm giving you as gold in here, because we're all learning. I'm very much a work in progress, so I'm just sharing with you what I've learned and ascertained over the years of working in independent comics and things like that. So, all right, so back to that. So you got to get a product, you got to get, you got a script, and if you're not good at scripting and writing, you got to get a writer, you got to assemble a team, unless you're going to do it all on your own. But the main thing is that you start stamping out pages so that you can really see what it takes you to do that. Like, for instance, when I'm on my good day, on a good day, I can pencil and ink an entire page in one day. If I'm not feeling the flow kind of thing, and I'm struggling to get the ideas on the page and things like that, it can take me days to get a page out, penciled and inked. I think some have even taken me a week, which is just crazy. But then I make up for it because I'll get kind of in the zone and I'll knock out a couple pages, one per day or something. And pencil and ink, that's pretty good for me. But so there you start learning about yourself and your ability to produce and things that you can't produce really, really well and other things that you just excel at. So you start to hone your abilities to do that. And that goes with anything, your writing ability, your penciling, your inking. But all of those have to be honed and realized by repetition, by knocking the work out. It's just like if you go to approach any of those big companies, they're going to want to see that you've done some stuff. They're not just going to take your word for it. They're not going to take a few pinups that you did and say, oh, wow, this guy can really draw, Batman or whoever. He's getting a Batman title. It just doesn't work like that. So even to prove to those guys, you have to show them by example what you can do. It's just like also, you got to keep in mind when showing that type of work, and this is a little bit off the beaten path, but if you're trying to show that type of work, get your bad pieces out of your portfolio. Don't flood them with a bunch of stuff and think that's going to help you. It actually hurts you. You actually have to eliminate all the weaker pieces so that only the strength in your portfolio shines. And that's a different video, different topic, but I just wanted to throw that in there real quick. So at any rate, you put this book together, right? So now you got this baby. And keep in mind, when I say a book, it doesn't have to be a full 22, 28, 64-page graphic, not whatever those page numbers are. It doesn't have to be that significant. It can be a zine. Like with our first few books, when I started working with Aerial and Assault or Time Comics, Time Press, Time Comics, and doing the Aerial and Assault books, our first few were zines. Zines are just a little fold-over paper back, stapled version. We take those to shows and start, delivering them and getting feedback, which is highly, highly important. It starts drumming up, fan base or whatever. So it's very important that you do that. And there's so much that you learn in that process, and it's very affordable to do that. It's very cheap. You can make those little zines at Kinko's or whatever's out there these days. I don't even go to those little self-printers anymore, but whatever, you can get them made. And that's a great way to get started, mainly because, again, you're going to learn what it takes to create pages. And that's a very eye-opening experience, and it's going to separate the men from the boys. So you got to do that to understand about yourself, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and so on. So once you've done that, once you've got some product out there, you've started to generate some feedback, you started to learn what people are liking, what they're not, you start hitting shows, which is really, really important. I can't stress that enough. I don't do enough of that myself right now, and I'm trying to get back into it because every time I go to a show, I walk away with so much information. I make good contacts. Like any other business, any business is it's very mandatory that you have good contacts. That's how you get ahead. I mean, it's all about who you know, right? So those shows are what delivers that for you. And it does more than that. It connects you with these people that are working in the industry. You get a better perception on what's really going on, what's really working, what's not, things like that. But then you also, past making the connections with these very important people, you walk away with this energy and this excitement to create again because you've just hobnobbed with all these other people that are doing it, they're making it. Some aren't making it and they're just there to play around. Others are making it big and they downplay it, things like that. But it doesn't matter. You're there. You're making that commitment to actually show up and be part of that industry. That is always going to help you to excel. I don't care what you're doing. If you're working in, I used to have a sign shop, and the best way to get ahead of the game and ahead of the curve was to go to the trade shows and see what new equipment was coming out and what people were doing with that equipment, how they were utilizing it. So in any industry, trade shows are just a really great way to essentially get ahead of the game and beat the competition. Because if you're doing it and another artist, writer of similar caliber isn't doing it, you're got a leg up on them. So that's just something to keep in mind there. Trade shows, comic conventions are extremely important for a number of reasons. I'm sure I didn't even name them all in that little part, but So yeah, so that, and then once you get the book out, once you've produced a book, now I'm going to talk about a couple ways to do this part, but what I want to tell you is that once you've got some product that you can, get out there to people, there's so many different ways to make that work these days. Um, so once you've got a book, you can submit to people like Image Comics. I think places like IDW and Dark Horse do it. Maybe they don't. Again, you guys can comment below, and I need to do my research on that. But even if they don't, there's places out there like Image that will look at it and hopefully give you some feedback. Hopefully, take your submission seriously. And if they don't, that you need to take a hard look at your work and come at it again. And I've never done that, so I don't know how the process works with those guys. I think after I get a couple books out, like book 3 of the Blackstone comic, I'll probably try it or something like that. But I want to talk to you about some other ways to do it. The ways that I do it actually are I put the book out there, and then I make it available on my Gumroad. So that's another way to immediately start selling some digital copies, not print copies, mind you. Now for print on demand, there's another series of sites, like ka-blam is one that I use, and you can upload your book there. You can order books that are printed from there. They're actually decent quality, and these are the ones that I get printed. I take to comic conventions. So I'll use ka-blam, and they also have what's called Indie Planet, and they'll make that available for print on demand. So if somebody wants a physical copy of your book, they can order it and they'll print it and ship it to them. It's a little bit costly because now you're talking about shipping costs and all that. So I don't see sales like that incur a lot for my book. Again, I've only got one that's actually ready. This is book 2. So essentially that's going to hurt my sales, obviously, because how many people just want to buy one book? They want to see. Some people are going to take a chance on it, but other people are going to say, okay, he's got 10 books out. If I get into this, I can buy all 10. So there's definitely a momentum factor and a buyer's confidence that comes up as you produce more and more content. So that's definitely something that I'm guilty of, that I need to get more of these done and get them out there to the public. So you got print-on-demand services. You've got places that will look at your book. Now, keep in mind, with places like Image, one thing that did discourage me from really taking it seriously for me was they kind of want a team effort. I'm pretty sure I read this on their guidelines, that they want to know that if they do pick you up, you can stamp these suckers out at least every other month. And I think maybe once a month. Maybe it depends on what they decide to pick you up for. But anyways, so that's where having a team of creative professionals is going to make all the difference in the world, because you can't simply get accepted and then go, okay, I'm one person. It's going to take me 3 months to get a book out. That's just not going to work. They're not going to. I'm assuming they're not going to, take you seriously at that point. So be aware of that. If you're going to submit to those types of industries, that you are ready to compete, essentially. And with Gumroad, it's nice because you can put it right up there. You can get some immediate sales going. You can get some feedback going. It keeps track of everybody that buys. So when you create a new product, you can easily target and resend a promo to your audience, your existing audience, like a mailing list. So that's all kind of right inside that platform, which is fantastic. So, obviously that's another way to really kind of, start building up some interest in what you're doing and build up some audience, because it's all about that. Like, obviously with YouTube, it's great for audience building and marketing. So you want to share your work just like I'm doing here. I'm sharing information about the process or how to get your own comic out there. But what am I doing? I'm illustrating my own book, and hopefully you're enjoying that as well. But so there's ways to kind of kill a couple birds with one stone or whatever, and really, utilize your efforts. So also, when it comes to like getting out there, there's things like Amazon. You can put your book on Amazon. I haven't done that. I've had people recommend that to me. So that's one that you can look into. But essentially, hopefully you're realizing that it all boils down to producing the work. The work is the main thing. You got to get that out there first. You can share samples of it on things like DeviantArt, and you can get some fan base going there. Another big one that works out for some people but not for others is Kickstarter. So Kickstarter, obviously you're kind of getting support maybe even before you start the project, but I really wouldn't recommend that. Again, you really want to learn about yourself before you get too invested in any of this. If not, you might just want to do fan art. I mean, you need to really know what your capabilities are. So say you get, I'm gonna go and blue line this and start adding some inks. So say you get a Kickstarter going, and you've already, you've stamped out half of the book, which is what I would really probably recommend. I mean, there's lots of different ways to do it, but this is what I would recommend. So you get half of this project done. You've got maybe you've got this team of people. You got a writer, you got an inker, artist, all that, and everybody gets along. Like you got to think of it like a band too. Like don't break up the band, right? You've heard that. Really important. So you can't just get people together and go, all right, we got this team, we're going to start rocking and rolling. All of a sudden you realize that you guys have very different ideas and you guys can't work together efficiently. You definitely don't want to start something like a Kickstarter or even, submit to a company and maybe get accepted if you're still working out all these kinks. So again, that's where getting a significant amount of the book will really help you getting it done so that you work these things through. Then once you've done that, you can do things like a Kickstarter. You can set up a campaign and say, okay, look, here's the work we've got. Really excited. Everybody's loving the work. We're loving it. We've got everything going, rocking and rolling. Do you want to be part of this? And you can set up tiers and reward people for those tiers. I'm sure everybody watching this has heard of Kickstarter by now, but that's essentially, one of the ways that it works. Now, I will say that it seems like the people that get funded on Kickstarter have a couple things going for them. One, they either have an audience, they're already pretty recognizable as a name, as a brand. You got to remember that anytime you do this stuff, you are a brand. All this stuff is a brand, so you got to be very aware of marketing. So the ones that get funded seem like they've got that going on, or they're extremely organized. Okay, I've noticed that a lot of the ones that get funded have a very organized campaign going to where everything is really spelled out to how they're going to reward everybody if it gets funded. So that's highly important. Be aware of that. Now, the other thing is you could just have a really amazing idea. Now, we all think our ideas are really amazing. I think Blackstone here is the coolest thing since Spidey, but that's my opinion. This is my character, so I'm going to think he's cooler than he probably is. But that's really where you have to, you got to have something really amazing and cool and different. Or you've got to be very organized and methodical and have all your ducks in a row. Or you just have to be already recognizable. You could be somebody that's already done something big and you're able to tap into that existing branding and market and say, hey, look, now I'm doing this thing. You thought I was cool on the other thing. Wouldn't you think I'm cool on this thing? And that's just kind of segueing your existing audience and marketing. And that works really well for people. So those are just some of them. I'm sure there's a lot more you could go into, and we could get into and say this works, that works. And again, if you've got more tips on that, that's where commenting below can really help all the fellow artists and creators. Forgive me, I always say artists, but I don't mean just artists. It's just I'm typically think of myself more as an artist, so I fall into saying that too much. But creators in general. So if we've got good information, share it below. I'd love to get the feedback from you guys and see what you think about it. What we've talked about here and what you can offer to other up-and-comers. Because one of the things I will say is that I really think that there's never really been a better time to be an independent creator. Okay, so when I first came up doing this, one of the things that got me discouraged, and I ultimately segued away from doing my comics for many years and started doing signed business graphics, all this. I'm just going to give you a quick backstory and tell you why I think it's better now. It was so hard to get represented and to get people to see your work. Like, you had to put all this effort in that I just told you about, and then you had to hope that somebody like Diamond Distribution or some big company would pick you up. And these things are still in place, but nowadays you have so many ways to get your stuff out there on your own. Social media is highly powerful. Sharing on things like Instagram and Facebook and all that. YouTube has been fantastic for me, and I'm sure for just a ton of other artists that are trying to get their work out there. It's such a quick visual media that I can also share ideas and thought processes on. It's just so powerful. So essentially, there's never been a better time for independent creators to get out there and say, hey, look, this is what I do. This is what I think is amazing and I'm passionate about. How do you feel about it? And to be able to do that and share that so quickly through the the entirety of the world essentially, but to really get it out there is just insanely powerful. So don't hesitate, get it out there, and if nothing else, you get it out there and you learn what people are excited about and what they're not and why, and that's insanely important. So do the shows, get the product made, get it out there in front of people, get the response, and then once you've kind of fine-tuned it, you can do things like submit to places like Image Comics and do your own Kickstarter and all that. So remember, build an audience and make the product. That's the hard part, but also the fun and rewarding part. So hopefully this video has been informative for you. I'm going to cut it short now. I'm sure there's more we could go into, but I'd love to know in the comment section below what you thought of it and what you'd like to see in the future. I'm going to get back to work on my comic so I can do everything that I've talked to you about. So good luck with your own ideas and endeavors. I wish you the best. And keep in mind, if you're interested in the Blackstone comic, there'll be a link in the description box below so you can pick up a copy of that from my Gumroad. And also I've got a new book on Learn to Draw Action Heroes available on Amazon for pre-order. So I'll make sure there's a link for that as well. So as always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon.